Star Wars, the juggernaut that you've probably heard of by now that tackles the space fantasy narrative of good versus evil through space wizards battling it out using the Force. This series has become renowned for its tale of the hero's journey that was established all the way back in the 70s and has gone on to spawn dozens of branching stories that flesh out and broaden the universe. Throughout the 90s and early 2000s, we would see dozens of Star Wars video games that would tell original stories that would become adored by many fans and exhibit a level of storytelling and expansion to the Star Wars universe that is some of the series' best to date. However, over the past decade, we would see a decline in new games from the franchise, primarily due to EA's stranglehold on the rights to the IP and the focus on making more multiplayer games and focus on live services rather than single-player narratives. However, this trend would change in 2019 when one of EA's own studios, Respawn, released a new Star Wars title called Jedi Fallen Order, which would go on to widespread success. What was so fresh about Jedi Fallen Order was how it borrowed many of the successful learnings that have come about over the past decade from modern video games. So they were taking systems and influences from Souls-likes like Sekiro, whilst incorporating Metroidvania-like skills to progression and exploration, and also adding a AAA learnings from many different AAA platformers such as Uncharted. But this isn't to say that it is a one-for-one copy, more they have taken these learnings and provided a fresh and innovative twist. More importantly, Jedi Fallen Order was a return to form for single-player storytelling for the Star Wars series, and man, Respawn have really made something special here. We are now in 2023 with the long-awaited sequel Jedi Survivor, and outside of the technical shitfire that was this game at launch, Jedi Survivor is undoubtedly an excellent sequel that builds on the solid foundations established by its predecessor, and manages to deliver an experience that feels fresh and compelling the whole way through. The story for Jedi Survivor continues the journey of Cal Kestis on his quest to master the Force and fight back against the Empire. Here in Jedi Survivor, we get a more confident and experienced Cal, who gives me that Luke Skywalker energy from Return of the Jedi, and I really like that. It's really great to see him find his footing and be able to navigate this world that he's been thrusted into in the first game. It really does kick the game off in a bang and really set it in motion. However, the overall theme and stakes and feeling of Jedi Survivor feel more aligned to the Empire Strikes Back. The story at play here, without diving too much into the spoilers, explores the line between light and dark, the choices one must make when facing adversities and trying to fight and protect the ones they love. There are many new and familiar faces here, and to me, this is one of the highlights of Jedi Survivor. I think that Cal and his journey is really something you can get behind and really enjoy, and I felt so invested in it the whole way through, but I think that was also in large part to how much I was also invested in his companions and many of the different people that pop in and out of his life, and that you are able to get their story and progression too. And this series of games that Respawn has made really capture what I love about the original trilogy, whilst still feeling fresh and not like they're trying to copy what has already been done or reinvent the wheel. If you are a fan of Star Wars, chances are that you'll be delighted with this story here for Jedi Survivor, as this story brought out the fan in me and reminded me why I like this series so much to begin with, which is something I'd say that the recent films and TV shows and many other forms of media haven't really been able to do. Respawn really do get Star Wars, and they can be creative whilst paying respects to the quirks and characteristics that make this series so charming in the first place. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a third game on the way. I mean, like, I just want to let Respawn cook and see what they make, but this has been a phenomenal experience, and I think a trilogy would really wrap this up nicely. I think that Cal and his gang of friends are a really great cast of characters to get invested in, and all their stories are really something that can resonate and connect with a lot of different people, myself included. I think if you are a Star Wars fan, without spoiling things because I don't want to spoil stuff, I'll remain a little vague here, but I definitely think that this game is worth it. It has a lot of that familiar feeling that you'll find in the older movies, and that Star Wars vibe and feeling that you're looking for, whilst remaining fresh and telling a new compelling story and getting you invested in a new set of characters, and it still has that feeling of a hero's journey and quest and all those things that the original trilogy told and conveyed, but and tells it in a fresh new way that is fun, and many of the moments, location, and developments that unfold here are ones that will stick with you once you finish it. So if you are a Star Wars fan looking for something new to check out and a new story to get invested in, then yeah, Jedi Survivor is definitely worth your time and worth checking out. I initially played through Jedi Survivor around its release in late April and early May, and my performance on the PS5 was primarily positive. I did notice some texture popping issues, and I did have my game crash once during a particular part of the game, and other than that, mostly the game ran pretty well. I did get consistent frames, and I did get the occasional texture pop-ins, particularly in later parts of the game, but other than that, the game ran pretty smoothly in performance mode. I recently went back around the time of recording this review to check my performance to see how the game is faring now that a few months have passed, and I can say that in performance mode the frame rate is still consistent, and I, over the course of 5 or 6 hours, only really encountered one metal object that hadn't been rendered correctly, and other than that, everything else was pretty well. Like, it was running very well, the game was getting consistent frames, there was no bugs, no issues, that being audio or technical, and everything seemed to be running fine. That being said though, there are still a lot of negative reviews surrounding this game on Steam, citing that the frame rate is still pretty poor and struggles to get 50 consistent frames on the lower settings. So if you're looking to pick this game up on PC, be cautious and maybe check with a reviewer that reviewed this game on PC recently, because this game does sit on a 62 mixed on Steam, so as enjoyable as I found this game on console and didn't experience any issues, your mileage may vary if you are picking this up on PC in particular, as that was where the brunt of many of the issues at launch were for this game. So I would say keep that in mind and just be extra cautious and maybe just check with another reviewer. But overall, I would just like to add as a side note, this is a real shame, the fact that I have to say this and we have to go through this kind of extra step, and it really is something that hinders what is otherwise a fantastic game. Because I do think Jedi Survivor, like on all the merits of it being a video game, it is a good video game. I'd like you to keep that in mind throughout this review. There is a lot of good things that I will touch on and say that Jedi Survivor is really good, and then I would like in the back of your head to just remember that this game did have technical issues, and that is the biggest setback for what is otherwise a fantastic game. So I think with time, Jedi Survivor will become a game that is definitely worth recommending, but right now it is a game that, at least if you are playing on PC, I would say be cautious, but in my opinion I do feel that it is fine to play on consoles. So with that being said, I'm going to now dive into the gameplay and discuss what makes Jedi Survivor so great. Let's get into that. Much like in Jedi Fallen Order, we see the return of skill trees here in Survivor. However, they're much more extensive here as you kick off with many of the abilities that you've previously acquired in Fallen Order, meaning that there is an expansive set of skills that you can tailor, mix and match and play around with at the start of the game, and you'll grow to acquire more skills and more stances and different sets of abilities as you play through Jedi Survivor. And many of these upgrades and skills that you'll acquire throughout your playthrough are all meaningful, and they provide new ways and new combos to your moveset or a particular stance, and they have an impact also on your force abilities. An example being able to push or pull multiple enemies instead of one. Many of the different abilities here, they all do feel like they offer some advantage and some meaningful upgrade to your experience and help you tailor how you want to be as a Jedi and what type of playstyle you want to approach different situations as. On top of that, the skill trees in Jedi Survivor introduce perks, which are equipable modifiers that can provide different sorts of benefits to Cal. There are 3 slots for these perks, meaning that you can theoretically equip 3 different perks. However, various perks may provide a substantial advantage consuming 2 slots, meaning that you may want to balance out what is powerful versus what is optimal for your build. You can also acquire different perks by completing tasks and collecting currencies for many different vendors. So that means that if you go out and you do a lot of the different side activities and side content, you may pick up a certain rare item and be able to trade that into a particular vendor at different places scattered across the galaxy and acquire different perks that you can mix and match and play to your liking as Cal. And it feeds well into the sense of exploration that you will just have when going through many of these different environments, you know? Wanting to take the path that doesn't look like it'll lead you straight to the main story and take a different direction may reward you with a different one of these currencies, and it really works well with the Jedi experience. But we'll get more into that when we talk and discuss the exploration of Jedi Survivor. Next up, now that we'll be diving into the more exploration and side content of the game, we'll be discussing the Ramblers Reach Cantina, which is a great new addition to Jedi Survivor that works well with the open world exploration. This place works as a hub for Cal to check where he can interact with different characters, similar to the Mantis, but it's more of an open space where he can discuss with different characters and have different interactions where you get to know many of the people you've met through your travels, and they can provide you with unique and exciting new quests referred to as rumors. And you'll recruit these people to join your cantina initially when you find them out in the wild or like different planets, and then they'll, make regular appearances at the cantina and tell you about things they've seen. And this lays host to many different side quests that are littered throughout the planets of Jedi Survivor. They can provide a multitude of rewards as well, and also become vendors for many different currencies for things that will reward you with cosmetics, perks, and the like. Some of the different personalities that you meet here will provide unique and interesting features that will also make cosmetic features and that bolster the cantina as well, like being able to fill up a fish tank when meeting a certain character, or being able to lay plants on the roof when meeting another. There's a ton of different cool things here that you can interact with, and the cantina does feel like a nice little hub for you to take a break from if you don't really feel like going out and doing anything too crazy. It's a fun little detour that keeps the game fresh. And on top of that, when interacting and chatting with many of these different characters, they'll provide a particular piece of information to these rumors that will help make discoveries and also encounter different side bosses and things that go off the main path. So you can go out and just explore entirely by yourself, but on top of that, you can also just be given a bit of a nudge when meeting these people and having them come back to your cantina. It's a unique way to kind of keep the game fresh and have a nice representation of the things you've done out in the wild kind of come back to your little hub. And I love that in video games where there's an area that can kind of show the reflection of your actions, You've met a bunch of different people, you've helped out a bunch of people throughout the galaxy, and then you see them, they're there at the tavern just ready to chat to you, or, reward you in turn, and rescue a guy or help a guy out, and he can fill up your fish tank. You can help another guy out and, have a garden or things like this. It's just great little details like that just really make the world come to life based on the things you've done, rather than looking at progress bars and numbers and statistics. And I think that's one real good thing that I actually love a lot about the Ramblers Reach aspect of the game. On top of it also being a neat way to delegate and give out side content, and that also feeds back into, once completing that content, usually having that reflection then reflect back on the cantina. It's really neat. So with that being said, now let's discuss the side quests themselves in Jedi Survivor. So how are they? How are the side quests in this game? Well, they're pretty good. The quantity of quests never feels too overbearing, and many of these quests do lead you in different locations with their platforming segments, puzzles, and optional bosses. So I'd say that there's not an overly large amount of quantity of these quests, but I would say that they hold a consistent level of quality that I think is pretty solid throughout the game. I think that many of these side quests will provide you with a good assortment of puzzle segments, optional bosses to tick all of these different levels of the game, and I do think that many of them remain memorable and engaging throughout. The storytelling through the side quests is often expressed more through the environments themselves rather than being reliant on things like cutscenes or, too much exposition. I think that it works really well, Cal might just have a few lines that he shares with BD1 and, run through an area, and it's kind of just painting a picture for you without just spilling it all out and, telling you exactly what happened. And I think it's really good. It's a good divergent form of storytelling from what the main game is, which is a lot more narrative heavy and cinematic, and I think the side content is a good different way to go about that type of content, and it keeps the game feeling different and fresh, and I think it's a neat way to do that type of content. And there's a lot going on here with a lot of different side stories that we can get into and side content, and that brings me to the next thing. On top of doing these rumors and these side quests and things that just pop up on the side, there's also things called bounties, which altogether just merge into one cohesive package. And now you're asking, well, what are bounties? So let's get into that. In Jedi Fallen Order, you would find various bounty hunters you could fight. Here in Jedi Survivor, you become the bounty hunter, meaning once you'll get to a certain point in the game, you'll interact with a certain vendor who provides you different bounties for a bunch of different misfits scattered across the galaxy. It's a great detour to break up the exploration from many of the side quests and rumors. It's a different form of activity. It's one where you're kind of like running around and looking for a particular boss fight, and it in a way is like reminiscent of that type of feeling where you're chasing and looking for an enemy, like a secret hidden boss in something like a Souls game. It is really cool to just try and find where these guys are scattered, and although you do have a map marker once you do get the particular lead to find them, it is never too underwhelming once you do actually locate them and begin the encounter. They're always so fresh and diverse and interesting, and many of these encounters provide a challenge relative to your selected difficulty. But the cool thing about these bounties is just how varied many of these encounters are and how you're rewarded for completing them all. I won't spoil anything here, but I definitely do think that all of them are worth completing, and they provide a great addition to the overall system and side content structure of Jedi Survivor, providing a lot more meaningful and diverse amounts of activities to do throughout the game. There are so many different types of side content here, and it is never, like I said earlier, too overbearing or does feel like it's just menial, dumb tasks. Everything here feels like it is the right amount of quantity with a consistent amount of quality. They have a good amount of little stories packed into them. They're not overly long, not overly boring or mundane things to do, and they are at a good level of quantity that makes the game feel like it is at an appropriate length that it needs to be. One aspect of Jedi Survivor that I really love is the amount of customization available, but more importantly, how you are rewarded and unlock many of these customizable items. See, in Jedi Survivor, many of the worlds are explorable, and each location will be littered with chests, and these chests will provide you with a cosmetic upgrade for how you customize Cal. It's a great approach that proves you don't need to put loot that provides unnecessary systems and stats into a game to provide, like, you know, a reason to collect the cosmetic gear. Like here, this approach works quite well because you're always looking for that new beard or color palette to chase that you can get for your lightsaber, BD, or even just Cal. Like there is just tons of different things that you can always be chasing, and they're all cosmetic just purely for your look, but it's that fashion sense and style that you're just always looking for, and it always makes, you know, finding a new chest feel quite satisfying. If Fallen Order was a quest to find the coolest poncho, then Jedi Survivor is the hunt to find the coolest beard. Overall, finding new cosmetics is always rewarding. The sheer amount of customization available here in Jedi Survivor is excellent, and it is another little great reason to go on a detour just to find and collect all the different chests available, and it allows for a good breadth of player expression on how you stylize your Cal Kestis. I hope they keep this type of system and iterate on this model in the next game, because it truly is something that is great, and I wish more games would do this type of stuff. Just have cosmetics as cosmetics. They don't always need to be a part of a loot system or be a looter. Not every game needs to be Destiny or Diablo, you know, and I think that it's great that Jedi Survivor takes this type of approach, and it's one thing that, you know, I loved always just going off the beaten path to see what I'd find, and I truly love that aspect of the game, coupled with all the other different aspects of exploration and side content that I mentioned. The visual and sound presentation for Jedi Survivor is on point, with everything that you would expect from a Star Wars experience, creating incredible worlds that capture you with their environments, their environmental effects, the biomes, the varied locations, and everything that you'll see throughout your 18-hour adventure. Like everything here, from the deserty plains to the techie space stations, the creatures that inhabit these places, the droids, all of it. It is so bespoke and tailored to something that you would expect from Star Wars, and it feels fresh and new whilst being charmingly the same in a way that is familiar. Respawn really do understand what makes Star Wars tick, and from their visual and sound presentation, it is just really so evident of just how much they do get it. From the swing of your lightsaber to traversing and wall running through different planes and feeling like you are an absolute badass Jedi, it is all here. Whilst we talk about the presentation, I do think it is important to touch back on a few things here that I noticed throughout my overall experience with the technical performance. So, one visual presentation thing that was kind of significant that I noticed towards the later half of my game was a few texture pop-in issues, and that was on the PS5 and playing in performance mode. So overall, I would say this game was a fairly stable and pleasant experience for me on PS5, but I do feel like towards the later half it did start to stagger a bit with the texture pop-in, and I do think that that does throw you out of these worlds a bit, and it is a bit rough because these worlds are just so incredible to just navigate navigate and just traverse through. There's so much variety in all these different planets. There's so many different things to just see and explore, and then when you have these immersion shattering moments, it is extra rough. But overall, I do think that this part of the experience is a lot better now than it was when I played the majority of the game around release. I did still notice a little bit of pop in here and there, but I don't think it is enough to weigh down the overall experience, and I think if they continue to work on this aspect of the game, I think both this and its sound design are just so phenomenal. And whilst we're talking about sound, I have to talk about how good the sounds of your lightsabers, the bullets from a gun firing, all these different things are. The force abilities, like all these different visual effects, the music and soundtrack is so incredible. And many of the different voice performances in this game are stellar too. There is a lot of great work that went into this game, and I think that overall it has paid off very well. I think that the actors have done an incredible job. I think that they have really made a captivating and enthralling cast of characters, and I'm really invested in Cal's journey and looking forward to where the next game, if there's a next game, goes. And overall, I think that this aspect of the game is what really is the nice icing on the cake. Despite a few little hiccups here and there with the texture pop-ins, I do think that this is overall a great aspect of the game. So to bring the components of this review all together, Jedi Survivor is a fantastic fusion of many of the different elements of modern video games, but it blends them so seamlessly whilst providing its own flair and unique inclusions to the experience. The adventures of Cal Kestis are some of the best stories I've experienced in the Star Wars universe for a long time. The combat feels satisfying and fun to engage with, and has a wealth of skills and perks that feel meaningful and bring the combat to life, making it feel more dynamic and adaptable to how you want to play. With a level of player expression and abilities here, you can really bring Cal to life and make him the Jedi you want him to be. The worlds and locations that you explore here are full of exciting discoveries and a neat bounty system that adds an extra layer of spice and challenge to many of these different places that you explore. It truly is a shame that this game launched the way it did, because had this game launched in a stable condition, I do genuinely believe that this would have been the most highly regarded games of this year. I still do think that Jedi Survivor is one of the better games I've played in 2023. I haven't played this game on PC, but it is still sitting around a 62 mixed on Steam, with recent reviews citing that there is still frame rate issues and different performance and texture pop-in and all those type of issues that plague the game around launch. So it is a bit of a mixed bag now on whether the game is truly fixed, with some people reporting that it works like flawlessly for them and others saying that the game is still a dumpster fire. So I would say tread lightly and tread with caution if you are going to pick it up on PC, but as for my experience on the PS5, it has run pretty well. I have had no major issues that have really hindered my experience, and that's what I'm going to say. Overall, under this myriad of bugs and technical issues that there would be with Jedi Survivor, lies a phenomenal story and a competent action-adventure game. There is tons of excellent side content and a combat system that is great to just play around with. It really is a fun and great game, and overall, despite the many issues that may plague it with its bugs and stuff that happened at launch, I do recommend this game. I think that it is in a much better state now, at least on consoles, where it can be playable with no issues. The only caveat I would have with this game is if you are picking it up on PC. I would say I may not be your best bet. You may need to just check with other reviewers and see where the game is at now currently, and check the Steam reviews before picking this one up. But if you hear that this game is running well on Steam, then I would say pick it up, because the only thing holding Jedi Survivor back from greatness is itself with its technical issues. Everything else with this game is great. There is a lot of things to love here, and I truly did love this game. And I think that overall Jedi Survivor is a great game. So if you're looking to pick this one up on PS5, yeah, I recommend it. I think it's a great game, and one that I think is a no-brainer for any Star Wars fan. So yeah, I recommend Jedi Survivor. I definitely think that it's a great game. It's just dependent on what platform you're playing on and how ready the game is to be played. But I think at some point in time, if you're on PC, it's a great game you should pick up. And for console players, I think yes, as of right now, I think Jedi Survivor is worth it. It's a great game, I enjoyed it, and I hope you do too. And if you've enjoyed this video and made it this far, maybe consider giving a like or a subscribe. That really helps me out. And thank you for watching this video, and I really do appreciate it. And if you want to see more, stick around to the end and see what else we've got. And thanks for watching, and have a great day.